When someone says board games, you probably think of games like Clue, Battleship, Monopoly, Sorry, or chess. If someone were to simply say to you, "Hey man, you should play board games," you'd probably be like, "Dude, no way, that's for kids." As a sophisticated college student, why would you waste your time on just a game? But board games, particularly modern Euro-style games, are anything but just a game, and today I'd like to tell you why. In a 2005 letter to the editor entitled Postscript to Hedgenberg's The Psychology of Games article, Thomas Nocera stated that the theoretical knowledge of what keeps human engaged in relationships is important. Relationships are fundamentally dyads, where two people are engaged in two-way communications in an ongoing, satisfactory, even if not completely pleasurable way. Understanding the motivating reasons why we remain in communication with each other is an essential component of game developer knowledge. He then went on to describe the exchange theory, which states that people will stay in relationships as long as their individual perception is that they are getting more out of it than they are putting into it. The same is true for board games. So what do we get from board games? How can playing board games improve our relationships and our interpersonal communication skills? Well, for starters, games are the primers of turn-taking, which is the basis of all relationships. Ron Weingartner, the head of development at Hasbro Games, believes that civilized communication behavior in games is exemplified by taking turns. He states that games are perfect teachers of the skill, because if people don't take turns, games don't work. Neither does democracy. In addition to turn-taking, games are highly reliant on interaction in the form of communication. In a 2005 article for Connect magazine, Jennifer Manuel, a teacher, identified the following aspects of interaction between children playing board games. Children find themselves clarifying rules, discussing content, teaching and learning from their peers, negotiating the social landscape of the class, and thinking critically about strategies, questioning each other about aspects of the game. She went on to state that playing board games encourages children to listen to each other, necessitates negotiations between peers, promotes differentiated learning because a student can engage with content on varied levels, and encourages teachers to assess children's problem-solving strategies, communication style, and negotiation abilities as they describe what they're doing and thinking as they play games. This was also noted in a 2014 article published in Games for Educators by June Matthews, who also pointed out that children who play games develop communication skills such as eye contact, using a strong voice, using an appropriate tone of voice, and matching the conversation and actions of others. Matthews has been teaching for 7 years, has worked as a social skills facilitator, and has degrees in social work and early childhood education. Dr. Greg Hatcher, an associate professor at Fresno State University, also illuminates the following reasons for playing board games after school or in the classroom. They improve attitude and motivation, they improve social and communication skills, they improve one's ability to deal with feelings, take responsibility, and think creatively and positively, they build self-esteem and teach individuals to act with assertiveness, and they teach players to deal creatively with conflict solutions and develop a stronger sense of identity. Research has shown that emotional and social development are intricately linked with academic success and health. Unlike IQ, emotional competence can be nurtured and developed, and according to Hatcher, board games foster this development, as well as other aspects of personal and social development in children and adults. Games are subtle and accurate yardsticks of human behavior. Team-based games are especially great for helping players develop transferable skills. In an article for Proceedings magazine, Sergeant First Class Joseph Arnold of the Illinois National Guard points out that military leaders should use board games as team-building exercises. He explains that the interpersonal communication necessary for a team to succeed in a board game is not too far removed from what is needed in vehicle operations, where telling a driver exactly where to place a vehicle can be related to telling a teammate where to fly the team's ship. Performing complex tasks while stressed and anticipatory planning are also important skills taught in Euro-style games that you can transfer to your interpersonal relationships and communications. In an article for Psychology Today published in 1998, Joe Teetle explains why and how games are used by the military and why games are just as important for adults as they are for children. He states that the more we become immersed in the world of games, the more we realize that games are revealing, and therapeutic by nature, as well as being amazing tools for teaching people about themselves and getting them back in touch with the world of play and civilizing them. He posits that playing a board game can tell someone as much about their emotional truths as a couple dozen sessions of therapy, and says that, psychologically speaking, games have a knack for setting us free. Another important aspect of games that Tito describes is stress balancing. In his article, he states that every game is a social world unto itself. What well-designed games do is take the bad stress associated with socializing out of the social situation, while leaving us with the good stress of competition. For example, when people play games, their attention is mostly focused on the board, which lets players say things they ordinarily wouldn't. Gaming provides an outlet for our natural competitiveness. So stress balancing is an important and delicate aspect of gameplay. A game that's anxiety-free presents no challenge, and one that's too stressful won't be played again. Bob Moog, the owner and president of University Games in California, stresses the value of protocol in games and how that is transferable to real-life situations. The game forces you to make a choice, but psychologists say the choice is stigma negative and insight positive. For example, in a game called Glass Road, you are a Bavarian glassmaker, and you must choose 5 action cards from a deck of 15, which will determine what actions you can complete that term. Your choices will be determined by your strategy and personality. Now, instead, imagine that you're on a first date and you have to make choices. Do you buy wine or abstain? Do you have a burger or a steak? Do you give your date an idea of who you are, or do you hide your personality? The options are vast and your choices matter. Sitting at a game board, you have to make these types of choices without social anxiety, and you can demonstrate how risk-taking you are. That revelation that might otherwise take 4 or 5 dinner dates. Dr. David Gamer, an Ohio psychologist and game inventor, says games are incredibly projective. They allow people to present elements of personality that reveal who they really are, and they can do this safely. Cooperative games are especially great for promoting and reteaching adults to communicate. An excellent example of this is a Euro-style game called New Angeles, created by Fantasy Flight Games. In New Angeles, you play a megacorporation in space using your wealth and influence to create more wealth and influence that will ultimately cause you to win or lose the game. Players are in constant interaction with each other as they wheel and deal, forge and break temporary alliances, and leverage credits and assets in order to gain financial superiority. The game is primarily based on interpersonal communication with a backdrop of sci-fi corporate warfare and amazing art. Euro-style games in particular are great for 20 and 30-somethings who spend the majority of their time in front of a screen, be it a computer, a cell phone, or a television. Board games get us to unplug and step away from the overstimulation of constant digital input, and to gather around the table with our friends and loved ones for a half hour or a couple of hours or an evening of gameplay. Euro-style games are typically deeper than classic games such as chess and typically offer multiple ways to play and earn points. This tends to make them a bit more interesting than your typical board game. It also relies more on strategy and dedication than a dice roll to determine action outcomes, which is a practical aspect that appeals more to adults. Euro-style game boards are often irregular and dynamic. Rounds typically consist of multiple turns consisting of several separate decisions, and the games themselves generally have elements of randomness that add to their complexity and replay value. In short, the benefits we gain from playing board games are numerous. They promote socialization, help us to socialize and communicate better, and teach us to cope with anxiety in social situations. Interpersonal communication and relationships can be built on a foundation of board gaming. Games can teach us to be better leaders and better teammates. And most of all, games are fun.